Welcome back to the Can I Tell You Something podcast, episode number 2.
Yes.
We're so glad that you've made it back. We do have to be a little bit honest here. That first episode, it was so hard to record. For me, at least.
It took a really long time to get going. Like, it felt like such a stressful ordeal.
And I think it's because we were trying to be something that we just aren't.
Which is professional broadcast journalists.
And we're just never going to be that. We have stories to tell.
Yes.
That is true.
And we really
are going to keep to that. I think it's time to introduce what we're going to be talking about here.
We're going to talk about city planning because
what a way to sell it. Oh my God. It's not going to be that boring. Okay. I'm telling you, I have what I have found in my sleuthy little ways, what I think is a pretty juicy take on gentrification.
It's a plot so thick it goes all the way to the top. You know, like
it really does.
It's a line of like logic and thinking that just is like everything sucks, but also not so badly.
Yeah, it's you know what? I think you've sold it pretty well. Okay. With that, let's get into it.
What about my thing?
Oh, okay.
Mine is about people. It's about how stuff actually tends to get done in cities. If you got a pothole on a street.
And there's so many here.
And like.
It's ridiculous.
It's never getting fixed sort of deal. Just like things just like left to go awry.
Yeah.
Or it's like, hey, we need this thing. And everyone's on board. And then the city's like, seems like a lot.
Not much we can do.
People just do it a lot of the time. They're like, oh,
so we have some interference.
Yeah,
perhaps.
It's DIY city planning. It's done by like the people a little bit, but there are also some hazards with it that relate to gentrification.
Okay, so as you can tell, we really sold you on this idea of city planning and gentrification.
If you're not on board at this point, why bother?
Try for episode 3, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. Can you hold my mic? Because I wanna do this. So my story begins with this lovely drink by the name of Olipop. And to really get you in the Olipop mood, I wanted to do a little ASMR just to make you feel like you're here with me. That's really close.
That's how ASMR works.
Okay, the only problem with this is I'm really, really bad at opening soda cans. So, I'm probably gonna have to use my teeth. Okay, ready? Okay, I got it. Ah!
Oh my God.
Shit. Oh my God! I forgot to spin it. Or like,
we watched Better Call Saul last night for reference. That's where that comes from.
Okay, you know what?
I
don't even mind because I love Olipop so much.
You look feral while doing that. You just licked your fingers.
It's because it's everywhere. Okay, before I get into my story, I do need to go wash up. Hold on.
For those who didn't see, my sweet, wonderful girlfriend, Claire, decided to open an Olipop with her teeth that had recently fallen on the floor. It was because our dog knocked it off. And so it was shaken. It was shaken like a bacon. And you opened it with your mouth and then your thumb and it went everywhere. It's a miracle we're all here to tell the tale. What a story of negligence. Almost like the cities we're going to talk about.
And I think that's a great segue. Okay, so let's get into my quite lofty claims here. I guess I haven't made a claim yet.
Oh yeah, make your claim.
So my entire reason for starting off with Olipop, which no hate by the way, I absolutely love this brand and their product because When I first got sick, which is a whole other side topic,
Oh yeah.
which I'm definitely going to get into. But like just basically I do have like a kind of a crippling chronic illness. And so I really have to watch what I put in my body. And
It's terrible.
soda
Yeah.
is something that I just love. I was not ready to say goodbye to them.
You have like a little sody tooth.
I do. Like, okay, so for reference, my best friend and I were roommates in college. And one night when we were quite inebriated, I would say, we found this fork on the floor.
Oh yeah.
And for a plastic fork. And for some reason, I think I was drinking root beer at the time. I said, look, there's root beer on the floor. And, you know, maybe it's funnier to me than it is to anyone else. But I think that really illustrates that, like, I have sodies in my hand a lot.
It was okay. The root beer on the floor thing was wild too, because then we took it way too far. Like, we put tape around it. We like declared it like a
part of a museum.
It was very much a monument type appearance, and we never moved it. Like, even after you moved out, it never moved.
No, that's not true. Because when we were told by like the landlord of the building that we were going to have another tenant move in, we got so scared that they think that we like were crazy and put this floor with.
Oh, you had to hide it out of embarrassment.
We killed root beer on the floor.
Your brainchild just died.
Okay, so when I started shopping for these Olipops, I would go to just the local grocery store in my neighborhood here in Seattle, which is Capitol Hill. And I was finding that there were only 3 flavors of the soda. I could find strawberry vanilla, orange, and grape. That was it. And, you know, I get it, but I was also used to a lot of flavors with soda, so I was really confused. And I kind of feel like I manifested this or something. But a couple days after I started drinking Olipop, they started popping up on my For You page on TikTok. And I found that they had posted a video of a new flavor called banana cream. And I was so excited because banana cream, or not banana cream, just like banana artificial flavoring is my favorite flavor of all time. So I was so excited to see this banana cream flavor. And so I went back to the store and I was looking for it. Nothing. I could not find her anywhere.
It was like to the point where you're upset for like deceptive marketing. Like you were fuming.
And the craziest bit
the craziest bit was I actually ended up going to Whole Foods to find this thing. And I never go to Whole Foods. Are you kidding me? You went to like, you know, cursed land.
Yeah. Because I knew that they had a partnership. So I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to find it. I just have to pay more money, but I needed to have it. So it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I get there, nothing. No banana cream.
It's not just like they don't have banana cream. Oh, well, like that's it. It's like the day is over, right? For you, Olipop wasn't just like, oh, it's Olipop. That's it. It's like, this is my special. This is my precious.
Okay. On that note, actually, I do want to introduce the idea of my specials.
Okay.
Because I am wearing one of them right now. My specials is kind of a list that we started compiling since we started dating of the things that I need in my life basically to be happy. And it's a bunch of different things. And yeah, I think you're right. Olipop definitely rose to be one of my specials. Yes. Another one is my emotional support blanket. Mm-hmm. I realized that the first episode we filmed, I didn't have it. And honestly, I think that the issues that we experienced might have been related to comfort. Like I wasn't comfortable.
I think that the blanket has special powers is the narrative I was kind of going with. Like, this is a lucky charm.
I think so too. Actually, funny story. And then we will get back to our story.
Yes.
But the very first time we lived together, we had like this little trial, couple months of living together.
A trial marriage per ultimatum.
Oh my gosh, ultimatum. Anyway, okay, getting off track. You spilled like ink from a pen on it somehow.
Yeah.
And I was devastated. It was It was bad. But you went into Mr. Fix-It mode. And you were, steeping it in the bath, I think.
Yeah.
And like you fixed it and it's, as good as new. So I knew that I had to venture pretty much out of my comfort zone to get this banana cream.
Yeah.
And so where did I go? I went to South Lake Union in Seattle. I hate to admit it. I went there and I had held off. I held off for years. I had never been to South Lake Union in my life until this.
What you gonna do in SLU?
Well, I went to the Whole Foods because I knew that they were going to have banana cream. When you just know you're right? Do you not experience that, or is that a me thing?
You mean like you feel like an inner calling to something? It's like it's gonna be that like you got a hunch. No, it's not a calling.
It's just like I made a statement in my head saying, "Oh, they'll have it in South Lake Union." No doubt in my mind. That's why we went.
Yeah, and I think that's literally just like how implicit bias works too.
Oh, maybe, because I would never assume that someone else is right. It's like I'm right, you're wrong. South Lake Union is going to have.
No, it's because you recognize the gentrification pattern, which is what we're getting into. Like
I knew it in my gut, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you knew it in your gut that like if this Whole Foods in Capitol Hill doesn't have it, it's going to be in South Lake Union. Because it's like you find certain things at University Village that you don't find in U District, right? Yeah. Crate and Barrel.
Aritzia.
Restoration Hardware. Like you went to the Restoration Hardware type part of a city.
I had to go to the source.
It's like there's West Elm there,
There's West Elm and South Lake Union.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh, I thought you were referring to University Village.
No, West Elm. Plenty of other
I think I would go as far as saying that South Lake Union is University Village. There's no difference.
It's like if University Village had to deal with more traffic. But not even though
Amazon.
Because like there are some spots in actually no, stuff closes at U Village really early. Like cuz those bars like if we really think about it, like those bars and stuff they're not open late.
No one's going out to University Village. Everyone's going to University District.
U Village is for like parents.
Is that not what South Lake Union is for tech workers?
Yeah. It's the next generation of parents.
Tech workers are breeding iPad babies.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
And for full disclosure,
I was wondering when this shit was going to drop.
I'm a person of tech. I'm going to be fully transparent.
But you're an unemployed person of tech.
I'm an unemployed person of tech.
Meaning you are not a worker in the tech industry quite yet.
So I can still get out, but I think I do need to be fully transparent about this, considering a lot of my takes are to the contrary.
Right.
Of like the tech stereotype. I'm not like the other guys.
Can we get back to the story?
Okay. Basically, I do pixel pushing color art stuffy tech, not the like coding, finance, algorithm tech.
He's a pixel pusher. Tell him what he is.
Pixel pusher. I like UX design, but I also really like digital art, graphic design, anything visual.
Definitely.
I really like.
I do not think that your profession and interests specifically are responsible for what happened in South Lake Union.
Yeah.
Amazon is. Like, let's say it how it is. No, it's true. It's like, although there are other now tech giants headquartered there, or not headquartered, they have like their offices there, such as Apple, Meta, Uber, Tesla. Like, they're all there now. But Amazon is the sole reason that South Lake Union changed from being like a manufacturing and warehouse district to a polished, devoid of culture office land.
It's because it's like they're making a tech campus there. Like it's the same thing in Redmond, right?
And I think that's what we really noticed when we got there for the first time.
A quick little but it's like it's also such a dense part of a city to turn into a tech campus. Like some of these other big tech campus projects are like further removed from a city, like because they need space to make
such
these
as
things.
Redmond. or like Costco offices being in Kirkland.
Yeah.
Like you're wondering why it happened within the bounds of the city.
And it's like, and it ended up displacing like a ton of people because of it.
Right.
So it's weird from that angle, because that's what it mostly is it's like places for, you know, recent graduates to live in high rises, because they're making like just at the level to afford that specifically. And so if you're gonna move to Seattle from, you know, some other part of the country, you don't know anything about Seattle, you're gonna choose kind of what looks like on paper the safe bet, like, oh yeah, I'll get a place near where I work.
I totally agree, because I don't know about you all, but I'm addicted to Zillow and apartments.com.
This is true.
It is like my favorite game to play. It's like, I want to look at all the new apartments. I think it really just goes back to, I'm nosy. I want to see, when I walk past a building, I want to know what the units look like.
Yeah.
Call me creepy.
You just want to peer in the windows.
It all started when I was a young child, because I loved looking at other people's windows to see what they watched on TV. If you're not putting down your blinds, y'all, I'ma come peeping. Not in a weird way.
You just wanted to see what they were watching.
It was all about TV. And
that's so funny.
If my cousin is watching, she knows exactly what I'm talking about, because this is a pastime we bonded over.
I didn't know that that's what you...
TV time.
So you would just go out and watch other people's TV.
But it's not that I was going up to their houses and sneaking up. No, I was like walking on the street and just, you know, looking over my shoulder. It was nothing creepy.
Your wandering eye.
If other people are going to be honest, I think a lot of people do this too. Even if it's not TV, like, okay, for example, when we first moved to Seattle, we did live in a high rise when we first moved here.
Sublet.
Yeah. We were able to look at a lot of people's windows at the same level that we were in the buildings surrounding us.
Oh my God, yeah.
And we had an obsession with this lady who was playing Wii Sports every night.
We Fit.
We resort fort.
Nintendo has a stranglehold over the fitness motion video game.
But you'd be lying if you said, no, I didn't love looking into her window.
Oh, yeah, no, it's great. There's a reason why the U District link stop, the art that they put up is all people's windows.
Oh, we should really, if you guys haven't seen this, we should really show people, because that is fascinating. I think that's a beautiful piece of art too, because it's so relatable.
For me, I have a weird relationship with it, because on one hand, it's really cool the way that they put it up. But on the other hand, you see that the glare of the TV is a bit funny, so you know it's just a video. And I think because of that, and like seeing that on a daily commute, you think about things like they got to keep, you know, these videos looping all the time. They got to make sure that there's power being sent to it. Like, it's like kind of a weird installation as well. Because think about the other installation, like the one in Capitol Hill, the one that looks like the dragon that's flying through, but it's made out of airplane parts. Right? Yeah. Like that doesn't have like a TV screen on it.
No.
But it was made a lot earlier. Right? So I mean, these installation pieces are gonna, I think, start adding more and more, like screens, TVs, lights, things.
You know where there aren't installation pieces?
Where?
South Lake Union. There is no art there.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's the first thing that we noticed when we walked down the hill and we landed there. It was completely different.
Because in Capitol Hill, for those that I guess aren't familiar, you have these street poles that are just covered in like concert posters, and instead of taking down a poster and putting up another one, they just stick a poster on top of everything. So there's just years of posters all somehow stapled up on these poles, and that's how you learn about whatever shows are going on in the area.
I mean, they're getting replaced daily.
And it's so funny because you'll see that it will ripple up on one side, and so then they have to like place a poster in between two ripples, and it's a bit absurd sometimes, but I remember loving how many different like graphic design bits you would see.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just like you look at one poll, it's like, look for inspiration. It feels as good as like a Pinterest board, anything like that, where it's like way better than that. It's just like, because you know that a lot of people made those probably in the area and they all had to put it up.
That's what I was going to say, is Capitol Hill is the home of artists. South Lake Union is the home of, I don't know, developers, coders. There's no art in that. And that's fine. I'm not saying that that's a bad profession or people shouldn't be proud of that.
Yeah.
But these two areas are vastly different. And you can see that reflected in almost the feeling and the tone of walking through them.
And I think that like that distinction's pretty, I mean, it's everything, because one of the things that you found out was that, like a lot of people from South Lake Union and all over the city, they love to come up to Capitol Hill, for nightlife, because there is so much art related stuff going on. So it's like, of course, the nightlife is going to be really good.
Exactly. And I don't know if we mentioned this before, but South Lake Union just closes so early.
Yeah.
That I can't even really blame them for wanting to go somewhere else. Because when we first started talking about this, I was very like, get out of my lawn kind of thing. But you know what? At the end of the day, I understand why they want to come to Capitol Hill, because it's for the same reasons that I want to and like continue to live here. Because this is the most accepting community, A, that I've ever lived in. And B, it's the most beautiful and vibrant that I've ever been a part of. Yeah. The problem, though, is when these tech workers who, like you mentioned, are making a ridiculous amount of money compared to the, more starving queer artist kind of vibe in Capitol Hill, and they're bringing that into our economy, all of a sudden our cost of living goes way up. Neighborhoods like this, they look so appealing online.
Oh, yeah. They look
on those
so
Zillow
good.
And apartment listings. But when you get there, oh man, you don't want to live there. Yeah. You don't want to be anywhere near it.
Because these people are in their 20s. They tend to be the target demographic for nightlife. And then you plop them all in a neighborhood where there is no balance between like art and like tech work, right?
I liked what you said about the atmosphere and kind of the artistic tone of Capitol Hill, because at the end of the day, I don't blame these tech workers from wanting to leave a more dry culture behind and come and spend, even if it's just a Friday night, come and spend time in a place that feels fun and exciting.
Like everyone wants to go to Mardi Gras, right? You know?
Right.
At a certain point, if you can't let people that have different interests, I'm actually going to change that. If you can't let people with different professions live near each other based off of how much they're economically valued, then you end up pushing these weird boundaries on culture that hurt a lot of people. Because to say that someone is only a tech worker or only an artist, I think is to sell them really short. And we know that people exist in multitudes. So like at the end of the day, there's bound to be crossover between people of different professions, but the tax bracket you're in determines a lot of where you live, and how much you're paid is based off of some sort of arbitrary sense of value economically. So you end up just, I think that everyone hurts, but of course some more than others. And I don't think that part is talked about enough. It's like people aren't enjoying these gentrified communities. Like they feel bad.
They all feel devoid of culture. They all feel like South Lake Union.
And like, I know that we're just like dumping on South Lake Union, but I mean, there's this weird, I think, bias towards one and then love towards another, because South Lake Union on paper in photographs looks like the more presentable city.
It's very clean.
Right.
There are no houselessness people. Mm-hmm. There's no street art, no graffiti.
It looks very like, oh, if I'm like scared of things that have been vandalized or have like little stickers and tags on them, then that's like too out of my comfort zone. Like it's very like international business appropriate.
That's a really interesting descriptor. I like that.
Actually, I mean, it would make sense though. Like,
Well, right. It's like that's where Amazon is and
Yeah.
all these other offices. There are probably, there's people from all over the world doing business in South Lake Union.
yeah,
The same cannot be said for Capitol Hill. But at the end of the day, these people who are now mixing up in Capitol Hill,
Yeah.
although they are bringing new perspectives and new money, they're harming both the culture and the like smaller scale economy in
Yeah.
Capitol Hill.
and I think it's because they feel more homogenous, and I feel like there's a lot of like selling short to be in that social space that is whatever tech is. So it's like that's why it feels like such a distinct, like this is a like a tech person that like stands out.
Right.
It's interesting. I notice it a lot with what people will wear. Certain things will look just too expensive for the people that walk around here. And
or too cheap for people who walk around in South Lake Union.
yeah,
And I actually want to speak on that because I'll admit that usually when I go outside, I'm probably wearing sweatpants or shorts and a tank top
you got a grout fit.
and my Birkenstocks. I'm never trying to pull off a crazy new outfit in Capitol Hill because I feel safe to be myself. But then again, when we were walking down in South Lake Union
Yeah.
and I was wearing that grout fit, oh my gosh, I felt like all the eyes were on me. It was terrifying.
Yeah, you stand out in a weird way. It's like you're not wearing pants. Like everyone
Where are
here is
your slacks?
It's like where are you? Like, and it is like it feels like a simplification, but there's certain details like that. Like shorts in the office doesn't happen.
Right.
That's not an office culture thing. And like,
So you're saying, like we've all been saying, the only people who would ever spend time in South Lake Union are tech workers.
yeah, it's like it's office core a lot of the time. I mean, people post memes on like all the time about like New York having that a lot. San Francisco, it's like it's the Patagonia vest and like the collared shirt underneath. It's because they're required to wear a collared shirt at work. Dress code standards have gotten a bit more lax, but they get a little chilly. So a vest is the perfect thing. It's like all
Wow. Okay. I just want to keep our story moving a little bit.
yeah.
While we're on a more stereotyped look at tech bros, I do want to bring up another aspect of gentrification besides the economic one, and it's the social impact. So if we lump all of these tech bros together, we usually have an image of someone who's probably a little tone deaf, white, male, average good looking, is making over $100,000 a year, and really only cares about his political perspective.
Yeah, it's just like there's like a certain like air of privilege to it, of course.
Absolutely. It's arrogance at its finest.
And but it's like you almost feel like wrong to go there at first mentally, because that's also a person that just walks in and they're just existing, but there's certain like connections you make to small details that it stands out.
Right. And that's why I wanted to go off that stereotype, because of course it would be ridiculous to say that everyone who works for Amazon or Uber or Meta fits into this category. Of course that's not true, but enough of them do that this stereotype lives on. And so when people like this start mixing and going out in a place like Capitol Hill, where gay bars, and there is one lesbian bar, Wild Rose,
Shout
we can
out.
get into a little bit more, used to prosper, they're not going to fit in. So what's going to start popping up? Oh, now there's more straight bars than gay bars in the gay district of Seattle. Make that make sense.
Again, for reference for people that don't live here, we have rainbow sidewalks in July
Dun dun dun.
and in August.
and sometimes September too.
The joke is that I'm going to speed up the joke. It's year round. It's pretty obvious. It's not like a subtle thing. There's like, there's flags everywhere.
And that is because
you can't be blind to it.
The LGBTQ plus community is home.
Or what we're discussing before this episode is like displacement for a different category that you would usually like, because gentrification, I think historically is thought of like white people moving into like predominantly like Black, Hispanic communities and pushing them out,
those people out.
Yeah. But it also works in the same way with like other protected classes. It reminds me of, guess what? Intersectionality. Like, just there are layers to the there are layers to the I love this term, the matrix of domination.
Wow.
Which is just like this way of thinking about breaking down like levels of like social culture and all that. And yeah, there are so many layers to it that I think if we can accept that like gentrification works in a lot of different ways, then we can start identifying where it's happening more. And I think that can hopefully get people closer to solving it, because it seems like it's an urban issue. Every urban place, any place where you have high density living,
it's bound to experience it,
yeah.
Especially in the cities where the gap between wages is so high. But I want to go back to what you were saying earlier. It's like there are so many different ways to understand social issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially when gentrification is usually talked about in a context of race.
Yeah.
That is something that me as a white woman and you as a white man we're never going to understand that, and we're never going to experience it. But now all of a sudden I'm living like in a new city. I'm in a completely different tax bracket than I grew up in, and I'm witnessing and experiencing it firsthand through things like Olipop.
Yeah.
Through not getting my banana cream. And actually, I found out that they have 12 flavors, not 3.
Yeah.
But we only sometimes have 3 stocked.
It also, those are so expensive too. Like we buy 3 of them maybe a week.
Yeah, and they're $2.30 each. So do the math, because I can't.
And I just got a 12 pack of LaCroix for $3.
Whoa.
So like,
it's because they're marketed as health drinks.
Yeah. And it's like,
and they're trendy.
And there must be some bad stuff in the LaCroix. Like, I don't know how it tastes the way it does all the time. And
it tastes like TV static.
Yeah.
Pushed through a blender, put into Rue's mouth, thrown up, and then you drink it. So I can see why it doesn't cost that much. Believe me. You either hate LaCroix or you love it. Ain't no in between.
Olipop is better for reference. Hey,
and that's what I was going to... Who doesn't like Olipop?
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people have heard of it or drank it, but once they do, addicts in no time.
It's like one of those little foo-foo brands that people love. Like Hydro Flask, I think, has pushed its way into that category.
How many Hydro Flasks do you think you can find in Capitol Hill versus South Lake Union? I bet you could get all the spicy little colors.
I think that
in South Lake Union.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another
2 colors here, if even.
Yeah.
You're going to get a knockoff.
Maybe secondhand. Like, you got it for free somewhere, But
it would have branded logos on it.
Yeah.
From South Lake Union.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Amazon. That's the weird part. And
I get weirded out when I see all the merch. Like the backpacks are a big deal.
At our Goodwills.
Yeah, at our okay, whoa, that's so true though.
That's a crazy connection. Like our Goodwills and a couple other independent thrift stores will often have tech company branded merchandise that people are probably getting like on their orientation when they first start their job. You might get a pen, a backpack, a water bottle.
Yeah.
Those show up at our thrift stores.
The funniest thing to
Who's buying that?
The funniest thing to me is our dear friend Sarah has an amazing Windows 95 crew neck sweater. Like that thing is actually, it's got like, it looks like something Urban Outfitters would do.
I think
all
it's
of a
their
sudden.
dads who worked at Microsoft at that time.
Yeah, so like it has like the authentic, the real Windows 95 crew neck sweater. That thing feels cool. The stuff we're seeing in our thrift stores is for Windows 8.
Or later.
Or like Windows 10. Like no one cares about Windows 10.
Right.
Like
I don't need a mug with that on it.
because also it's like the logo at this point is just like 4 squares. Whereas like back then they were doing like the whole pixelated thing and like
I think this is where the pixel pusher is really coming to life.
Yeah, okay. So here's me exposing myself.
Hey, good to know. Good to know.
I don't know. It helps give me a little bit of my creative pizzazz or whatever I call it.
And a tech bro would never say that. That is why you are not the same.
Honey,
just saying.
Deep down, I do need to acknowledge I am a person of tech.
Okay, so I do need to wrap up this story, and you're probably wondering how Olipop even fits into that. At the end of the day, I don't like gentrification. Alfie doesn't either. Go get an Olipop, even if you only have 3 flavors.
Yes.
And be more open and honest to there being social nuance. Don't gatekeep oppression and experiences that you think others can't have.
Because guess what? There's an even worse bad guy out there. And its name is Elon Musk. And if we lose track of him, then he will get the best of us. The best thing that like rich people can do is like turn poor people against each other.
Exactly. I know that this story was a little weird, and it's probably more of an abstract metaphor. But I told it because it helped me understand an experience that I couldn't have otherwise known about.
You can learn about it, but you're always looking from the outside. And just like, I think it's important to spot out those little details like you did, because those little details help you build a bigger picture and understand that stuff's a lot more complicated.
Right. And I think when you kind of change the lens on what you're trying to understand to something more playful, like me claiming that Olipop helped me understand gentrification, you open yourself up to like a whole new realm of possibilities. And that's the open-mindedness that I think we all really need to lean on right now.
There's this idea that we have to have the final answer, the right answer to everything.
Or else people will think poorly of you.
Yeah, and those answers, they change a lot over time. Like what is best today is not necessarily true tomorrow. Things change constantly. Like it's just as simple as trying to, like, I remember for the previous episode, I was reading like old newspapers written in the UK. Just every single word that they say, there's like a different cultural meaning to specific words that we just don't have anymore today, because people aren't speaking like how they wrote in 1800s Victorian England. So it's like when it comes to social things, they're very much a byproduct of their time, and they show up in a lot of different ways. So I don't know, like learning a little bit about like the history with that sort of stuff can really help ground that understanding. And if you can kind of start to see where stuff like that happens more and more, you can start to like address the problem. It's not just like visibility. Are we aware? Yeah, we're aware. It's like
it's more than just posting on your Instagram story and being like, stop the gentrification now. It's like, that's great.
Yeah.
But what does that actually mean, and how is it actually affecting people? Mm-hmm. You can't, until you know that, you can't do anything about it.
And it's also like, think about how much of ourselves we actually expose on a regular basis with things like, tiki-taki. We tend to expose a lot more of ourselves. Things start to slip between the cracks. Things that people didn't realize were patterns amongst a lot of people are showing up. And I think because of that, there's like a big social reckoning going on. I mean, you can have the woke culture part of it, but it's more like we are glimpsing into much more of people's lives. And I think that we have to find resolutions that everyone's lives are very different from ours and incredibly complex. Like we've never seen this level of detail from so many different people. So just keep that in mind. You're seeing a lot more than any other human has in history. So yeah, stuff's going to be
We're all going to have
messy.
different, very separate experiences of the same social issue, is I think what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Oh, totally. Like you start to see those social issues bubble up to the forefront when it's like, oh, no one like openly talked about it, but somehow they all felt comfortable like sharing on this part of the internet about it. Like that's how a lot of weird stuff gets done these days.
Right.
Shout out BTS fan base Army. I love Army. Not that Army. BTS Army.
So my question for you is, we started with this whole gentrification, Olipop silliness, but your interest lies in city planning and like the nitty gritty of how things get done. So I know you have a few stories prepared.
Oh, do I?
So the floor is yours.
Oh my God. Okay. So first of all, one of the first podcasts I ever like listened to very consistently was this one called 99% Invisible. Shout out Roman Mars, the most soothing voice in the world to me. Tells a great story. Brilliant person. I am not Roman Mars. I'm not Roman Mars. I'll tell you that much.
But one day you might be.
But one day I might be.
Roman Boz. Sorry, continue.
Looking for souls. Yeah, so that's the side of me I think that shows up a bit more.
While sitting on a couch.
You
can't be like that in a chair.
No.
You're too uncomfortable.
But I love Roman Mars. I love 99% Invisible. And one of the first books I read when I moved to Seattle was the 99% Invisible City. And I got to listen to a whole audiobook narrated by Roman Mars. It was amazing. But they go through all these great stories about things that show up in cities and like a little history behind it. So I'm going to tell you or retell a couple of those stories. But I want to give credit where credit's due because I don't know. I love Roman Mars.
We couldn't tell.
Yeah. Anyway, so the first story, I do need to get my notes out because I'm not about to just make stuff up. I did my research.
We cite our sources here, people.
You'll see that I'm kind of like a big old like nerd about citations.
Is it perhaps because you went to the School of Informatics?
I feel it. I went to the information school and learned how people and computers be interacting. So, it permeates my brain.
It's permeating. Okay, so
the reverse osmosis.
So, what's your first story from Roman Mars?
The first one, you know those little ramps or those dips into sidewalks?
Yes, they're usually painted yellow. With the bumps.
Yeah, with the bumps and all that.
Yes, I know her very fondly.
Yeah, these little dips, they're great. We love them. Guess what? They didn't always exist.
Tell me more.
Those things they weren't always around, you know?
Someone had to make them, I think
Someone
is what
had
you're
to
getting
make
at
them.
here.
Yeah. And one of the people that really helped make them was this guy, Ed Roberts. So Ed Roberts, I'll give you some backstory. He got polio at 14.
Oh.
So paralyzed from the neck down. So this was around 1953 that he got polio because he was born in 39, 53, he's 14 and paralyzed. He attended high school via phone until his senior year.
Are you trying to say that this man was zooming into class in the 1950s?
Literally zooming into class, like Zoom University before it.
It seems like he's responsible for more than just sidewalk dips.
Yeah.
Seems like this guy's an inventor.
Trendsetter.
Ahead of his time, if you will.
A visionary.
Wow. Okay, tell me more.
Which
I'm
actually kind of,
hooked.
yeah. Which also that wasn't from the bit in the book that I read. That was Encyclopedia Britannica, and I saw that detail. And I was like, what? Like, people were setting up this arrangement back in the day, but at a certain point, people had to get educated, right? And
Totally.
people that can't use their legs, guess what? They deserve an education too. It shouldn't be that controversial. But we all haven't always had like the ability to give that to everyone. Certain things had to come into place first. And guess what? Phones were pretty popular at the time. So that's how they figured it out. No internet, but guess what? You can call into class.
Pretty cool.
So he attended high school by telephone until his senior year. And then he was refused his high school diploma because he didn't meet a couple of the graduation requirements. You want to guess what those were?
Walking at graduation?
No.
Oh.
Physical education and driver education.
No.
The guy couldn't use his legs, and they're like, guess what? Can't graduate high school because you didn't do PE and learn how to drive.
So, can I just infer a little bit here?
Yeah.
I want to see how much my spidey senses are tingling.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm assuming that he was in a wheelchair.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Curbs were not made for people with wheelchairs because we live in an ableist society.
Yeah.
Who would have known? And so he probably couldn't get off the sidewalk safely without doing a little 360 wheelie.
Yeah,
move.
you had to do like a little ollie. Like that's what they do on a skateboard. It's an ollie.
Wow.
Olipop. Well, it's all tied together. That's the theme.
Ollies.
Ollies.
No, but like I'm assuming he needed some sort of safer route to get off a sidewalk.
Whoa.
So tell me how he did it.
Okay, yeah. In 1962, our good friend Ed was accepted into UC Berkeley after doing 2 years at a local community college.
Okay.
Big opportunity. And then they found out that he would need an iron lung in his room so he could breathe.
Honey, what is an iron lung?
I'll show you the most concerning photo I found first.
Okay.
Here's a baby in an iron lung. And what it does is a pressurized tube that like stops the air around your neck. So there's like a negative pressure around your lungs and then positive pressure. So it basically forces you to like breathe when breathing is difficult. It's like a respirator.
So that was going to be my question. These are not used anymore.
No, and a lot of that is due to the polio vaccine making them largely unnecessary. But I think that like that's what it helps you breathe is what it does.
Interesting. So they found UC Berkeley found that out.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, it's going to be a pain getting that in your dorm room. You're not allowed here. So they they rescinded their offer, whatever BS that they gave him. It was a big deal for Berkeley to accept this kid. This would be, a kid that really stood out in the student body. I saw some like newspaper clippings talking about the story and all that. So it was like a big interest piece, it seems like at the time.
Interesting.
Kind of, I'm sure that it was a talk of the town. NPR might have done a story. Who knows? But people knew about this.
The town was a talking.
The town was a talking. So in 64, he earns a bachelor's degree in political science. 66 earns a master's degree in political science. And at the time, he is hanging out with his crew of people with disabilities because, got to flock together when it's a very ableist world.
Right.
And so he hangs out with this group called the Rolling Quads.
I love it.
I don't know what I was trying to figure out what the name came from or like if there's some.
Are there 4 of them?
Could be. But they made or they were rumored to have coordinated efforts where they would go out in the middle of the night and smash up sidewalks and then add their own ramps to the sidewalks.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let me just make sure I have this right.
Yeah.
They would take, I don't know, a sledgehammer? How do you destroy a
sledgehammer?
sidewalk?
Yep.
Probably the corners of it. Just, they're going to pound
They're going to Pound Town. Is that what you wanted to say?
You know, it was the first thing that came to mind.
And then you tried to work your way out of it.
I really did. You got me there. But anyway, they were taking these sledgehammers, destroying them, and probably putting like, what, a wood plank down?
Or no, it was like they only needed like a bag of concrete. It wasn't too much.
Oh, they were like setting, like,
yeah.
They were making these blend in almost.
They were DIYing it is what was going on.
Oh, because I was thinking it was going to be like a wooden plank, because I see those all the time in construction sites for crosswalks.
Yeah.
But no, they were actually trying to, it seems, implement this into city planning in the future.
Yeah, so they were installing, it was basically, they're like, the city's not installing these, so we're going to do it ourselves. So them going out in the middle of the night and all that sort of stuff is more of an urban legend. Anyways, I got some fun photos for you. Here's like a old magazine cover.
Oh, so it's really showing kind of how difficult it really does look for a wheelchair to go up curbs.
Yeah, and here's like an early plan that this was created by a person. There's a documentary out there about them.
But what are the plans? They look kind of complicated for me to digest. Can you describe them?
Yeah, so the plans are like, it's this almost schematic of how they would go about sloping all the angles for these ramps, because it's like, it has to be really specified and like,
right, it has to be up to codes that would have already existed.
They would have to create new codes for it. So I would imagine
new codes. So it's like they're really inventing this as they go.
Yeah, like a lot of that, I mean, the width of your sidewalk is determined by the city. Like it all has to be written down. You can't just DIY a sidewalk. It's all like, that's why it takes forever to change things.
Is that why when you go in different neighborhoods, taking it back to my story, like the sidewalks are vastly different?
Yes, that's exactly why.
Wow.
And no sidewalks are the same.
Right.
Like Philadelphia has, in this book they talk about Philadelphia having a lot of the really interesting sidewalks, because they'll have things that indicate certain legal bits, like who owns certain parts of the sidewalk
based off like the brick that's laid down.
Yeah, like that? Exactly.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean that's why like neighborhoods can be changed dramatically, but it has to be done through the city.
And it seems like it's incredibly difficult to get those changes done.
The ADA is the bee's knees when it comes to...
And this was in the 60s that it came into act, right? When was it?
The 90s, 1990. And do you want to know?
The 90s?
Yeah, so the ADA didn't come into play until the 90s. So that's the Americans with Disabilities Act.
And it's only 30 years old, people.
Yeah.
Whoa.
You want to know what happened on the steps of Capitol Hill when that was being signed?
Our Capitol Hill? Or Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C. The other lesser-known Capitol Hill.
The lesser-known.
Over yonder in the East Coast, there's a protest of sorts, or it was like a demonstration of sorts, where metaphorically... and like literally people that couldn't use their legs, people in wheelchairs and all that sort of stuff, abandoned their wheelchairs at the bottom of the Capitol Hill steps and crawled up to the top.
Wow.
Yeah. There's not a lot of photos of it. I found...
Probably for the best.
Yeah. And it was meant to symbolize how difficult it was to get a bill about disabilities into Congress. Like the people that would benefit from the bill without the help of a wheelchair, which guess what? Can't go upstairs, right?
Or down.
Literally crawled into the Capitol building because that is the only accessible way to get up those steps.
I think that really shows what we were talking about earlier, when you have to experience an issue to fully understand it.
Yeah.
Like me, a fully able human being, would never even have to think of how hard it might be to enter a building because I can just walk up to it. So why would that ever be front of mind for me?
Yeah. So that brings up one of my favorite little accessibility things. If you can't tell I am in the UX crowd because
He's a UX guy.
because I talked about accessibility in that tone. But so there's like this concept within accessibility of having like a temporary disability. What does that mean? That's like, okay, you just broke your leg. Guess what? You can't use your leg.
And now you're seeing how difficult it is to navigate the world.
Yeah.
Even though you know that you can go back to having your leg work, you're feeling it for that moment. So now all of a sudden the world sucks.
Yeah. So the first time I really felt it in like the most like on the nose metaphor was when I first moved to Seattle. I was taking trash down 5 flights of stairs because there was like no
elevator.
There was no elevator in my building. And on one of the flights of stairs, it's like this really narrow, weird carpeted staircase, and not every level has like the same stair pattern. So I couldn't see because I was holding this trash, and I assumed wrong, and I fell down a good flight of stairs and rolled my ankle. And I was living on the top floor at the time, and a lot of like no elevator, and like a lot of the stuff that I needed were on the bottom floors. And also in my apartment too, I was living up in a lofted space that was like, it wasn't just stairs. It was almost like a ladder to get up to live in. And so it was just so like on the nose, annoying to have a busted ankle in that environment. It changed everything I did instantly. It's like the walks that I was going on with Alfie, didn't do them anymore. Like I was just like very, like, you know.
Because it was so much harder for you to even get in and out of your building.
And that was just for like a couple days, right?
Right.
Or not a couple days. It was, but it was for a short temporary.
It wasn't permanent. And it's not, you knew you could get through it because you didn't have to live with it.
Yes.
But if you were in a wheelchair, you can even live in that building.
Yeah. And I even looked up the code too. Like, you know, how many wheelchair accessible units do you need in a building? And it's like, it's really small. I think it's 10% of the units need to be wheelchair accessible. And because the first floor was on the ground, they meet the criteria. Wow. And it sucks too, because it's like that first floor, to get to the number of units that they need to be wheelchair accessible, part of the design was that they had this really long extended ramp. So it's like, even if you're wheeling into that place, you have to do like an uphill wheel the entire, like half the way up to your apartment. So it just sucked. It was not a good building, but it meets the code that it needed to meet. And that was like the weird bit to me.
So I'm curious if you know how long it took between Ed and his little gang.
His dastardly doings, yes.
Yeah, them kind of tearing up the sidewalk to these ramps being integrated, I guess, pretty much everywhere in the US.
Yeah, so the wheelchair ramp stuff was going on, like the initial design, right? The schematic I showed you, that dates to 1973. The independent cover that I showed, that was fall of 1974. The Americans with Disabilities Act happens in the 90s, or 1990, exactly.
So it's decades.
Yeah, so when people think about like social progress too, that's sometimes the pace it is. And so it's like, do you have time to wait around decades to get a ramp on your street, or do you smash up the sidewalk and do it yourself? And that leads me into my next little bit, parklets, right?
Ooh, okay.
So it started when this trendy design group in San Francisco, they were called the Rebar Group, and they're like a group of urban activists, I think is how they would describe themselves. They did a demonstration where for a day they set up a temporary park in a parking spot, and they just rented it out like they would a parking space, because when you rent out a parking space, you can do whatever you want with it.
True. You could have a picnic.
You just have to be gone when the meter runs out.
Wow. And in this photo you're showing, they've really set up. They've brought in some grass, a tree, some chairs, it looks like. Looks like they're kind of mimicking a picnic. Yeah. And there's a sign that says park in progress.
Yeah, exactly. And because it's a demonstration, it has like a little bit of a cutesy flair to it. They have like a little water fountain too, and all sorts of details. So they're cutesy designers, and they decide to squat in a parking spot for a bit and say, guess what? It's a park now.
Interesting.
And so then that started this whole trend in more places where parking spots were being converted into outdoor patios and seating areas, and they're called parklets. And so I found a great article from this blog called Urban Finland, where they go around Helsinki and they take photos of all the different types of parklets that they find.
Oh, so what are some examples of those?
So I have just two here. And I'm going to turn my phone sideways so we can see it a bit better. I like this one a lot because this is built on a hill. And so you're like, oh, how would a parklet work if the parking space is not flat? People can build it flat. You can build a patio up. So you see that there's multiple levels to it. There's like outdoor dining.
Looks like some raised beds.
Some raised beds.
Vegetation.
It looks very fancy. People are enjoying themselves, having a nice little dinner moment. And then this one, this is another like common one you'll see. You'll see in a lot of cities outdoor dining spaces that kind of pop out into the street, and they'll have cabanas.
We see that here. It's only in the summertime.
Yeah,
here in Seattle, like when it's winter, they pack it up and move it. I've never known that those were parking spots.
Parklets.
That's so interesting. I love that.
Yeah,
because I benefit from that every day.
And so this is like an example of one in San Francisco, where it was like first kind of done, where you have different restaurants. They have like vibrant branding on all of their little parklets. That's just expanded outdoor seating. And so actually the city of Seattle has a whole program for it.
Wow. So I was going to say just real quick, seeing these photos, they all look vastly different.
Right?
That is that's so exciting for a business to be able to kind of step outside of their doorway and reach customers. Yeah. But it's also like they look like little individual pieces of art. Yeah. Which is really exciting.
Well, we have also, the one outside of like Oddfellows and Lost Lake. Like those are parklets. Like those were parking spots that are now being used for people. Whoa, isn't that crazy?
Getting cars out of cities.
Whoa. We don't like cars here.
That's not true.
We like people walking places.
If you can
with cars
walk
on
there,
the outside of it.
It is a better experience.
Yes.
So what's the...
Back on track. Seattle became interested in building parklets and approached the city, so San Francisco, in 2011. Today, Seattle has both a parklet program and a streetery program. And I will be attaching the booklets for it for anyone that's curious, because they have like all the details that go into what's required. And
so there's code for this. Wow.
Because they wanted some city control over it. It was too renegade. If like people are just renting out stuff on their own, they wanted to have it kind of be an organized thing.
And if you're building platforms with the idea of people sitting on them, I'd hope they were up to code.
Yeah. And so then there was an article that I stumbled on that was talking about parklets and like post-pandemic space, because people were encouraged to make dining outdoors, right? So a lot of these ended up being developed during the pandemic. So it was a big opportunity for, you had a lot less car traffic. You had a lot more people walking around, and people wanted to get back into restaurants. You see more parklets.
This might be more of an out there connection.
Yeah.
But you mentioned in the first story with the wheelchair ramps that the quote unquote creator of those suffered from polio.
Yeah.
And so we know the history behind that.
Yeah.
And then here with the parklets, COVID had to happen for this social change. Yeah. It seems like for city planning specifically, like really bad things have to happen for the government or the city to want to change something.
Oh, just you wait until I give you more random anecdotes. The only reason why we have skyscrapers is because Chicago burnt down.
Not Chicago.
Basically, yeah, bad things happen, cool things happen. It's history.
It's really interesting to think about it through
Oh,
that
yeah,
lens,
totally.
because honestly, I am not usually thinking about city and local government and what policies they are going with and not going with.
I don't think
Call me crazy.
I don't think you're missing out on much. But this sort of like this perspective, like how does it actually get done? Because if I don't care in that sort of like marching into city hall type way, but I want things to change, what happens? Like what happens with those people? Because there are a lot of us, I think,
Right.
don't have time to do that. So how do you get it done? And so yeah, this leads into the more controversial side of parklets.
Oh no.
Uh-oh. After hyping them up, I'm now about to cancel them. So
Cancel culture must end.
all right, so this one person was talking about parklets in a post-pandemic world. Wrote in this editorial, public space is a verb, not a static object. Public spaces must be cultivated and maintained to flourish and grow so that they are best able to contribute meaningfully to a city's social infrastructure and diverse, inclusive, resilient public realm. So the general idea is that public space only works if there's attention drawn to it, if there are resources drawn to it. If you kind of say this is public space and then don't do anything as a city towards that space, and then you're surprised when it's in disarray, like, yeah.
Meaning these
big
spaces
shock.
have to be maintained by the city?
Not necessarily. It's just like so it needs
Because
to be
I've
maintained
seen
by
plenty
people.
of public spaces that are maintained by people. Like, let's think about Cal Anderson, for example.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like you have to have people that are cultivating or creating a culture in that space. But if it's like a spot where people, get pushed away from, like there's
Gentrified in, perhaps?
Yeah, like those public spaces take on a different form. Like public space is entirely a byproduct of the people that are in that space. That's all it is. It's
and
just
if the
culture.
people change, the space changes.
And yeah, exactly.
So why is that controversial?
Because this is where it gets controversial. And this is where we go back to Roman Mars and his infinite wisdom. Not just blindly following, but this is an interesting thing to think about. So a parklet near a coffee shop that aesthetically matches the business can look and feel more like a private extension than a public amenity. Something built by and for latte sipping elites rather than being equally open and inviting to everyone. We found the capitalism.
Sniff your coffee. I don't think that's the metaphor I intended it to be. I'm on to what you're saying.
Exactly.
And I fully agree. So now all of a sudden, all of these South Lake Union tech bros who are coming in for a nice poppin' huppin' cup of joe.
Yep.
That they're going to pay $8 for. Oh, but they want to sit outside. Okay.
It's a patio. Yeah.
But now the people who live in that area, they don't want to go there. That's too yuppie. Now the parklet is only benefiting those who can pay to be there.
So let's go back to the original quote, not this one where it's like the coffee shop bit, but the one before it. So it's like, okay, public space is a verb, not a static object. That means that how that space is being used says a lot about what is valued in space. There's new space that shows up. It gets prioritized, oftentimes for businesses, local businesses. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But just ask the question, have you ever seen parklets around your city show up that encourage spaces that don't involve buying things? Like a park, a big green grass area, you don't need to buy anything to enjoy it. But a lot of these are implying that you need to buy things to enjoy the parklet. So
pay to play.
Yeah, you got to pay to play. That's the issue. And so I have a great final quote for this little story so we can wrap this bad mamma jamma up. Okay. Also Roman Mars. Both official and do-it-yourself urbanists need to consider the neighborhood they're adapting to their personal taste. One should be careful about assuming that any popular improvements will be unambiguously good. All city reshaping projects come with cultural implications and associations. Isn't that just like wonderfully put together?
I think it really encapsulates the theme of this episode very well.
Yeah, it's a great final quote. I didn't realize how good of a final quote that was for this episode.
I think if there's one takeaway I had from both of our topics.
Yes. Okay, what's one thing we learned at the end of all of this, both of our stuffs?
Okay, I feel like my brain is blank. There's nothing running through
Mine's pretty blank too,
but we do have to find something.
We gotta tie this thing together.
Okay, so I think the one big thing that I learned from both of our stories is that one, social change takes a really, really long time.
Yes.
And two, if you're not aware of that social change, you're probably going to be swept up in the middle of it and probably end up contributing to it in one way or another. And so the best thing that you can do for yourself is have an open mind on different experiences and also allow other people in your life and those around you to grow, because it takes a really, really long time for everyone to come to the same conclusion about an idea. Like you said, with the wheelchair ramp phenomenon, that took decades to come into play. Someone started it in the, 50s? And it wasn't until the 90s that it was a thing. You have to have patience for people to grow, or that end goal that you have in mind, it's going to be so much harder to get.
My biggest takeaway from all of this is, first, I grew up in a very sparsely populated area. Some would say beyond suburban, perhaps rural.
I think that you're right about that. For context, it was less than 5,000 people in your hometown.
Yes. But I really love cities. I loved every city I've ever been to. I didn't think that I would be comfortable living in a city, and then I just tried it out and I haven't looked back. And I love a lot of the details about it. That's like my favorite bit, is the little details in a city. That book was great for me to learn more about those details in a city. I love spotting them on my walks around. And that love for cities is, I think, why I care a lot about this city, and I care a lot about the details that I see in this city.
And when some of those details are threatened by outside forces
beyond our control.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. And I think that's why we care a lot about this subject, and we wanted to bring light to it in a more non-traditional route.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to digest and talk through.
Yeah, if it feels more casual, then we can have that difficult conversation.
Right. It doesn't take away from how serious gentrification and very slow political change is.
Yeah.
It just makes it more approachable.
Well, it's like the gender race IT professor I had said, like, there are certain conversations that we feel visibly uncomfortable having. And so that's often because there's big social implications of those conversations. And we're uncomfortable because we don't want to address them head on. So to address anything that is socially uncomfortable, it's often a very, very good, fruitful effort. And it's uncomfortable for a reason. And it's usually because there's some sort of weird power dynamic going on. So yeah, our little, our being annoyed at a soda can relate to something as big as gentrification.